What's up and welcome to the Level Health Podcast. We've got Milos Rankovic on the show today for a second time. His first time was back in November of 2021, and this time around we are talking all about applying motivational interviewing as a fitness and nutrition professional. Big thanks to Milos for coming on our show. You can check out his Instagram at Milos_nutrition_coaching. Of course, we'll have that linked in the description below. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
You just finished up a certification, a credentialing in motivational interviewing?
No, I actually got just accepted to be a member of Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers.
And what was the process to accomplish that?
Yes, well, the process was that you need to finish certain amount of certifications. So you have like a foundational course, then you need to finish certain intermediate and advanced workshops. And after you finish that, you need to have certain amount of mentorships when you record your sessions, and some professional that is already Mint member is giving you his feedback. They do the coding of the session to check the fidelity, how close you are to actually doing the motivational interviewing on a right way. And then after that, if you had all that right, you send your application. There is a process how you apply. And then you are booked for a 20 minutes interview when you have simulated client with a certain topic. I had a sleep, the woman that needs to improve her sleep, but she also has some doubts about that because she study late night in the evening. She don't have time for that, etc. So it's an actor that is going to give you hard time over the 20 minutes conversation. And then after that, you need to do, after conversation is done, you need to send your reflection on the session that you did. After you send the reflection, then around 1 month I waited for 4 or 5 weeks to get a decision. Yeah, and it was positive. So that's that. It's relatively straightforward. You need to finish all these courses and to finish the application process on time. That's very important.
Yeah, how confident were you in going into it? Because I wanted to talk about really starting out with the basic principles of motivational interviewing that you apply with your clients. But how confident were you in going into that?
I'll tell you when the day, if you asking me how confident I was when I decided to go for a motivational interviewing, the confidence was, let's say, from 1 to 10, I was, let's say, 5 or 6. I know I had it, but I know I need to improve a little bit more, gain more proficiency to guide the conversation. But if you ask me on the day when I had my interview, I was pretty confident. Let's say 1 to 10, I was 8 or 9. Then I'm gonna have a good conversation there. So I think I put an effort into the preparation quite well. If that didn't happen, probably I would be much less confident. Definitely.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned you felt prepared to guide the conversation. That's something you worked on. What are some other basic principles of motivational interviewing? Of course, you kind of mentioned a little bit there, but if you wanted to expand on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So let me first say, for the people who don't know what motivation interviewing actually is. And motivation interviewing is nothing but collaborative. We call it collaborative conversation style for strengthening people intrinsic motivation and commitment for change. We can also say that the motivational interviewing is kind of a collaborative, client-centered conversation style for resolving ambivalence about the change. Now the topic of the ambivalence is kind of central topic in motivational interviewing. Because whenever you have a change, you have also ambivalence about that change. And ambivalence, look, there is a lot of myths about ambivalence. Ambivalence is nothing more but people having mixed feelings about making a change. They feel 2 ways about changing. They have the reasons for, they have the reasons against. Now, the interesting thing about the human nature is that whenever we start arguing, whenever people are ambivalent about the change, let's say like that, and they have the reasons for and against, and we start persuading them, arguing, and telling all the reasons for change, the people immediately start voicing all the reasons they already have against it. And the more people talk against change, it is less likely they're actually going to make it. So the motivational interviewing has been made in order to resolve that ambivalence by letting clients argue for change, by inviting the clients to talk about all the reasons, needs, desires, abilities, their commitments to make a change, with the assumption that the more they talk about the change, the more likely is it that they are actually going to make it. Now, and then we say, like, the literally, if conversation has been done right, the clients are the ones who are talking themselves into changing. Now in motivation interviewing, that supposed to be done within the certain attitude. We call it spirit. It's the way how you are with the client. Those are the principles of motivational interviewing. And we say the first part of definition, it's a collaborative, client-centered, which means that client is not just a passive recipient of the coach wisdom, but the active participant in his own journey. You know, that the client chooses what he wants to do and how he wants to go about it. The client and the coach, they're like making certain alliance there. When the coach has the expertise in his own field, but the client has expertise in his own life, and both they're joining their expertises in order to solve any problem that client potentially has. The basic assumption, what I can say, look, the basic assumption is motivation interviewing, that the client already has what it takes in order to make a change. He signed himself. And the coach belief in the client internal capacity to pull the change off. And during the conversation, he calls forth, that's what is inside the client already, but that client maybe potentially cannot see inside himself at the moment. And if the conversation has been done right, the client slowly builds up his intrinsic motivation and also build his confidence that he can actually make the change happen. So just to conclude, if in one sentence you can describe the traditional coaching would be like, I have what you lack and I'll give it to you. Motivation interviewing style would be, you have what you need and together we'll find it. So it's not like you need to be fixed and I'm the one who's going to do the fixing, but it's more like you have what it takes. And I'm just going to help you to uncover that what is already inside you, that is enough for you to make a change. And these are the basic principles, like partnership and collaboration and evocation, inviting the clients to dig inside their own reasons, their own belief, their own needs, why it's important for them to make a change. With the assumption that the more they talk about it, the more they are ready to actually make it. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, of course. I think it was important to start with the basic principles right out the gates. We can kind of paint the landscape a little bit, but it's occurring to me more and more that the client-centered approach is just the inevitable progression, the inevitable evolution of our industries, the fitness and nutrition coaching spaces. The more conversations I have around just general shortcomings with our current approach and our historical approach, it comes down to not being client-centered and not focusing on the individual in front of you. And you mentioned, the collaborative and the something you didn't say it, but I heard unconditional positive regard. I think that's kind of what that spirit is, the spirit of MI.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, those are all ways and strategies to attack this lack of client-centered approach, the lack of caring about the individual that's in front of you. And if you are you are working towards a client-centered approach, you realize you're working with people, that ambivalence is going to come along across the board.
Yes.
And I think that's where most of the friction occurs, because any trainer that's been in the industry for a couple of days can take somebody who's ready to change at that stage where they're ready. They are gung-ho, all ready to go. They can take that person and tell them what to do and walk them through a workout and everything and tell them what to eat, all that stuff. That's not hard at all. But that's not the majority of the cases. More often than not, they're going to say they want to change, but they're either not prepared to, or the change they think they want is not actually what's aligned with their underlying goals and values. So I wanted to ask, how can motivational interviewing help one of us, a fitness and nutrition professional, understand and address the client's motivations, their goals, values, beliefs, everything that's underlying this change they want to take?
That's a beautiful question, because the motivation interview is actually perfectly suited to do exactly that. And in one sentence, by creating non-judgmental, non-threatening environment within which we then invite the client to explore his inner life. It does literally that. And let me expand a little bit on that. So that environment that we are making, like non-judgmental, non-threatening environment, we make by being with a client in a certain way. And we talk about the spirit. I mentioned already partnership. So we assume that clients has something valuable to contribute to our relationship. There is also one thing that calls accurate empathy, and accurate empathy is, it's a number one interpersonal skill that can lead to positive client outcomes. And accurate empathy is nothing more but understanding, being able to take the perspective of that other person that you're talking about, being able to understand their emotional experience, being able to look the world through their own eyes and like walking in their own shoes. And then to be able to effectively communicate that back to the client. So the client actually feel understood, and he feels that someone on the other side actually understand what he's going through. And this is super important, what we are trying to do. And then the acceptance. We have this notion of the acceptance. The notion of acceptance is that not that we are approving on a personal level whatever client is doing, but we are not passing value judgment on that. We are not attaching the self-worth of the client to what he does in life. And then look, if the client feels that he's going to be judged, how likely is it that he's going to be able to explore his inner life, his values, his beliefs that he might never explore before, if he just assumes that he's going to be judged? Because if he starts exploring and he gives you what he explored and you judge him, he's going to feel bad about that. So if client feels that he's going to be judged, he's going to be defensive. So exploring the inner life is not going to happen. Then what we also do in motivation interviewing is affirmation. We are trying to highlight the good sides of the client, his skills, and also the past successes, the efforts that the client is making, his character strengths. So when we set up the conditions like that the client feels respected, that he feels understood from the side of the coach, and he doesn't have that fear of kind of judgment that is going to happen in the relationship, we set up the stage where we then invite the client. This calls evocation. We evoke from the client his own values, his own beliefs about the change he's going to make. We try to explore his motivation, his desires, his needs. We try to invite him for him to paint the picture of a bright future that he has for himself. And within that, he starts with that exploration. So first, we are setting up the stage by making certain strong coaching alliance, where he's going to feel accepted, where he's going to feel understood from the side of the coach. And within that framework, we are then inviting the client to explore his inner life. Let's compare that with the traditional coaching. I'm going to go, each principle. Let's say like partnership. We said the client is an active collaborator. Classical coaching would be, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm the one who's going to tell you what to do. We said acceptance. In the classical coaching, we said, passing the judgment immediately. We said accurate empathy, understanding their perspective, understanding where they're coming from. In the classical coaching, what do we have? If I can do it, but you can do it as well. We completely invalidate their experience. We don't even try. We don't even try to understand the perspective of that person from where they're coming from. We say affirmation, like highlighting the client's strengths. What do we do, Josh? We have deficit detectors. Okay, we pinpoint all the negative sides and shovel back to their face because if we do that, we show them how big experts we are, because we see all these little flaws that they are doing, how smart we are. And then at the end, evocation, inviting the client to paint the picture of their own bright future. But what do? We paint the bright picture of their future for them. We tell them why they should change. We tell them how they're going to change. And we tell them why that is good for them. We completely take the agency from their own hands. We take the autonomy. We completely disempower that client. So my point is that with MI, it's a complete paradigm shift. The way how you see your role in the coaching relationship, the way how you see the client role in the coaching relationship, at the end, how you see the nature of the coaching relationship itself.
Milos, just listening to you there, I began to develop a more grim, not I would say grim, but it's pretty clear that a lot of our shortcomings as fitness and nutrition coaches, whatever that role is with your client, it takes a bit of emotional intelligence. I mean, looking back, the things that you were saying, passing judgment on a client, attaching self-worth to whether or not they're hitting their goals or, their behaviors. That is really, really, really emotionally immature. Like it takes just a little bit of introspection, a little bit of self-thought to see where that is a shortcoming, not within just ourselves, but then we're portraying that, or we're projecting that onto our clients, and it just seems like that is a pretty obvious shortcoming that we've had, and I don't know why that necessarily is, although I think that people have a tendency to run away from their emotions in general. But I think that
yeah, you're right.
before we move
you know
on,
what also
yeah, go
you
for
know
it.
what
Go for
also
it.
is there, so sorry for interrupting you
No,
there.
no, absolutely.
So but you said something that I want to refer to. Look, not every person has the same ability to take perspective. I don't even want to use the word empathy, because empathy sometimes has been so misused and whatever. Like taking the perspective, understanding that your own perspective is not the only perspective that's happening in the world. The way how you see the world is not the way how other people see the world. The way what your life experience is not the way how other people life experiences. And we have the problem with the fitness industry. There is some amount of the population who are unable, or at least they are not trying to do perspective taking. They're not trying to actually see the world through the eyes of their own client. They have only their own lenses through which to see the world, and they're applying that mental model to do every other person they're working with. That's a problem. That's a thing in the psychotherapy as well. You have Teresa Moyers and William Miller. They make this beautiful book, from the 70 years of research on the psychotherapy, the effective psychotherapists. And they found that the empathy, the ability of accurate empathy is the #1 interpersonal skills for improving the client's outcomes. And look, psychotherapy, yes, it's a different field. But whenever you are having the connection between two human beings, the principles of human interaction will still apply. And there were studies where the psychotherapists with low level of empathy, they were measuring the low level of empathy with these people. They were less effective than when you give the people the self-learning materials. So you have a psychotherapy with therapists who are having enough empathy, more empathy. You have psychotherapists with a low empathy, and then you have people just giving them materials, self-learning materials that they are going to apply in their own free time. People with self-learning materials were doing better than when they're exposed to the psychotherapists with a low level of empathy. So low level of empathy is actually toxic. Teresa Moyer says, look, if you don't have ability to do perspective taking, don't be in the helping profession. There is no reason for you to be in the helping profession if you cannot relate to the other human being. You be accountant. Go to do something that doesn't have to do with people. That's all. So sorry for digressing here.
Absolutely.
It came to my mind.
I had already lost my train of thought a little bit there anyway, so you kind of rescued me. But you mentioned you hesitate a little bit to even use the word empathy in this situation, and that makes sense because it really has become, it has connotations of a little bit more woo-woo, a little bit more spiritual, and a little less practical. But we're talking practical as fuck here. Like, this is about as practical as it gets, being able to utilize these tools. And I think that empathy, being able to develop or cultivate the ability to empathize, is where the rubber meets the road with ambivalence. Because you have to, if somebody says, they say they want to make this change, they seem like they're trying, but they're not making it, or whatever it is, like, you have to understand that there are other factors at play here. And just assuming that they don't want it bad enough, or that they don't want it bad enough, is just really, really a very short-sighted opinion. But I wanted to see, how do you utilize motivational interviewing? What are some practical steps? I think you've mentioned a few already, but some tips to help process this ambivalence with somebody utilizing an MI approach.
To process the ambivalence, yeah?
Yes, yeah.
Well, with the ambivalence is the thing that, first of all, you need to understand the nature of the ambivalence. I think that is super important for the coaches. And if I can revert here to something that is called, you probably know about that, it's a stages of changes from trans-theoretical model of change. So we have these phases through which clients are going when they're about to make behavior change. And we have this pre-contemplation, the client doesn't even think about making a change. And then you have contemplation, they're thinking, having a mixed feelings. This is the ambivalence side. This is exactly the ambivalence phase. Then we have a third phase, that when they resolve that ambivalence, then we go to preparation stage. After preparation, there is an action. After an action, there is a maintenance, if they maintain that action for more than 5 to 6 months. Now, the thing with the ambivalence is that it is a part of behavioral change process. You cannot go past it. You cannot go from pre-contemplation stage to the preparation stage. You need to go through that phase when client has a discussion inside himself. Look, there are certain benefits to change. There are certain drawbacks for changing. What will I do here? And then what is happening, we have this in the fitness industry myth of uncoachable client, of a resistant client.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is the client who is currently protesting. The thing is that ambivalence as a normal process is happening, and you can get a client who is in that stage at the beginning. Resistance is usually happening as a byproduct of overly directive and authoritarian coaching style. When you are not responding on the ambivalence the right way, when you are arguing for the pro side of change. So we said the people inside themselves, they have the reasons for, they have the reasons against. And the moment you start arguing for change, people immediately start arguing against change. And there are reasons for that. We have that something like calling a phenomenon of psychological reactance, where when you tell people what to do, they have that kind of negative emotion that someone is impinging on their sense of the autonomy. And they try to restore that sense of the autonomy, the feeling that they have the autonomy, by arguing, by protesting, by silently sabotaging, by doing the opposite of what you told them to do. The client and the client are not checking in. That's the form of silent sabotage. And when you told them what to do, they don't do it. This is the part of it. And what coach does in that situation, the coach doubles down on persuasion. What the client does, he doubles down on resistance. And you have uncoachable client. The reality is that it was not a client who was uncoachable. He was made uncoachable, but by you inappropriately addressing the ambivalence, and by using too directive coaching style. So the solution for addressing the ambivalence is first to recognize, to understand what the ambivalence is. People are having mixed feelings about the change. They are in the contemplation stage of change. And then within that, when you are in that stage, you try to evoke from the client their own reasons, their own abilities, their own needs, their own desires, their own commitments for making the change. Why is that change important for them? Not why is that change important for you? Not what do you think that is important for them, but what they think that is important for them. And then you try to reflect, to catch the change talk and to reflect on that language, with the assumption that more people talk about the change, the more likely is that going to make a change. And there is a plenty of research showing that language about the change predicts future change. So the more we talk positively about the change, the more likely is that we are going to make a change. And the opposite is also valid. So the solution is that you understand what the ambivalence is, that you don't think that's something pathological that now you need to solve for the client, that some anomaly that needs to be fixed. This is the normal condition that you are not going to fix by being too directive, but by inviting the client to take the lead. And you reflecting on that and elicit from the client their own reasons for change. It is great what you said. The personal trainers make these mistakes a lot, which is completely normal. I made it so much in my poor clients, before. So the client that comes for a personal training already resolved his ambivalence. He's now ready to act. He actually even planned for himself. He maybe called you, he came to the gym, he signed the contract, he's ready to train. So he's in action stage at that point. But the client that doing personal training has a lot of side behaviors that he wants to change as well. Like he wants to talk in between the sets about the nutrition, they want to talk about sleep or whatever. And the trainer thinks if he's in the action stage for the training, he might be also in the action stage for the nutrition. The reality is that no. He's in the action stage for the training. He might be in the pre-contemplation stage about the nutrition. He doesn't even think about nutrition. You're telling him about nutrition, he doesn't want to hear about that. Or he's ambivalent. He thinks about it. So, and you are using directive style that you're using for personal training, which is completely normal because he's in the action stage. That is not going to work for the behavior that is he's thinking about doing. He's not actually ready to do it. So being aware of in which stage of change your client is for particular behaviors, it's super important to know how to react. For a nutrition coaching, it's even, you might in nutrition coaching have a client who comes and he's he's in the completely action stage to do ketogenic diet. He started already. He needs your tweaking a little bit, or he may be in the preparation stage. He did his research. He resolved the ambivalence. He's ready to do it. But he might be in the pre-contemplation stage for your flexible dieting macro tracking approach. And you think because he's ready to work on his nutrition with this particular dieting approach, he's ready for any other dieting approach. And that's simply not going to be true. So understanding the client's language, recognizing the language of ambivalence, and understanding that ambivalence cannot be resolved by being directive and telling people what to do, because then the psychological reactance and resistance, and then you're just going to stuck with this power struggle between you and the client.
Yeah, that's not a very fun place to be. It seems like kind of the crux of identifying this as like a constant assessment really is actively listening to your client. Or
Yes.
really, I think it's probably a good practice just whoever you're talking to in your daily life to practice that active listening.
Exactly.
Because trying to switch that on as you're meeting with a client or you have a session is probably going to be pretty hard. But that's an example of how these practices can bleed over into your everyday life and benefit you in other ways. But I think it's important. You did a very good job of kind of laying this out, but I think it's important to frame the perspective of this entire experience, like the ambivalence, how that's going to be a constant process of assessing where they're at in that model of change, but also identifying, like you had mentioned, that the ambivalence is not only expected, it's necessary. Likely, how long that stage lasts it varies from person to person.
Yes.
But that should be expected.
Yes.
Just like relapse should be expected. You should expect to regress.
Yes.
You should expect to fail on your behavior changes. And so I think that would be likely a big part where fitness and nutrition professionals can go wrong and make a mistake is not identifying that these are part and parcel. These are expected parts of this process, this experience, the ambivalence and the regression. But then moving on to what are some other mistakes that professionals can make trying to utilize the MI approach?
So you mean professionals that are already trying to do MI?
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's
not the professional who never heard about MI.
Yeah. Somebody that's trying to take bits and pieces. Because another question I wanted to ask is how to integrate this.
Understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Understand. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm going to tell you my mistake. First of all, I'm going to tell you the mistakes in motivation interviewing. Motivation interviewing is hard to learn and to become proficient in. And mistakes are completely part of the journey, but not like a cliche. Really, if you spot the mistakes that you are making, if you recognize the mistake, you really learn from them. They are really the learning opportunity for you. So that being said, I wouldn't avoid mistakes normally. Like I would be avoiding that you're not recognizing those mistakes. That's going to be a little bit more of a problem because then there's no feedback, there's no learning. I'm thinking that people trying to apply motivational interviewing all at once when they just start learning it. You read one book about motivation interviewing, you think that you know what it's going about, you try to apply it, it doesn't work, and then you give up from that. It doesn't work. Like motivation interviewing doesn't work. The thing is that motivation interviewing, like everything else, needs to be break down in parts to be learned. And I can send you the article. We can actually attach the link later for people who wants to download. Maybe in the that would be great. There is a great link, 8 steps how to learn motivational interviewing. Like everything else, there are things that you break it down in parts, and every other part build on the previous one. And then when you're focusing on that part, you're doing only that part. You're not trying to do everything at once. And then every other part, as I said, is a building on the previous one. Then eventually you are going to integrate everything as a whole, but you cannot expect to do that from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be the first mistake. So be patient with that. The second thing would happen with the people who are trying to apply the motivation interviewing when trying to listen to the client. There are these micro skills, ORs, reflections and open-ended questions and affirmations and summaries. The people usually start having their internal conversation about what they're going to say next instead of listening what this client is actually saying. That happens all the time. So you're thinking how you're going to form your next reflection. And actually, while you're thinking how you're going to form your reflection now, you are completely missing what the client is saying at the moment, and you're missing actually to actually learn about the client experience. Now, no, you can avoid that, but being mindful about that, understanding that your internal dialogue is going to happen. You might get caught up in it. So when that happens, it's important that you recognize that the thoughts are there, that you are now start to build your response to the client while the client is still talking, and just choose to pass that and to focus on what the client is saying. You give this undivided attention to the client's words and waiting for the client to finish for you to then give your sentence back. So people get entangled in that a lot. The third, I give you one more. What is the problem for people trying to do the motivation interviewing is that, you know, you're gonna get stuck within the conversation for sure. Like when you're learning motivation interviewing, you're gonna cycle around and you're not moving conversation forward. You're not moving conversation. Nothing is happening. And the people usually revert back immediately to what they know to do best. Advice giving, telling client what to do, planning, premature planning. So you're stuck, you don't know where to go. Okay, let's see how we are gonna go about it, which is too soon because client is still in his ambivalence. He still tries to resolve his ambivalence. When you are having that situation, the good option is, you know, I had my first mentor in motivation interviewing says, when you're in doubt, you reflect. You reflect back to the client what the client is saying, so he can keep talking and maybe digging a little bit more deeper inside his own agenda. So you can get a bit better understanding what he's saying, or you can do a little bit of like a summary. I like to do the summary. When you get stuck within the conversation, try to summarize whatever has been said so far, and then ask the client, like, how would you like to proceed forward from here? And then the client will move the conversation forward. This kind of stuckness, that kind of stuckness is kind of normal and is happening with everyone. Just have some kind of plan before you start. Plan that you're going to get stuck, and then when you get stuck, have something what you're gonna do. Doing a summary of whatever has been said, and then asking the client how he wants to proceed next, where he wanna go from here, is kind of a good option if you're getting stuck in the conversation.
In some ways, I feel like it.
Yeah, and one more thing.
Go for it.
Sorry, Josh.
No, not at all.
So, one more thing. The people using motivational interviewing to manipulate clients for their own agenda.
Oh.
So this is about the spirit. So they're using MI skills without the MI spirit. The thing is that let go of the notion that it is your agenda that needs to be filled within the conversation. But accept that it is the client journey. It is client agenda that we are working on here. And you are following, you're guiding the client to fulfill his own agenda. And within that framework, you are applying the skills. That's all what I want to say. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, of course. Those were fantastic because I think it kind of speaks to practical application of it. But I think in some ways, of course, over time, you get better at it. It seems like it may even be easier to utilize this approach, of course, as you become proficient at it. But I mean, it takes a lot of the pressure off of you for having the answers. And I think a lot of times we get tied up into our approach being the correct one, or our beliefs and our opinions being the ones that like you said, that the client needs, that person, you know, you're there to solve that problem. If you completely reframe it's kind of, it changes the whole ballgame, because you're no longer beholden to having the answer. And though it does feel good when you have the answer, and it makes you feel, feels your ego, and you feel like you know everything. That's really not a long-term strategy, because again, at the end of the day, the client is what matters the most. But okay, so very last question for you, Milos. How can a fitness and nutrition professional begin integrating motivational interviewing? Do they need to become an expert and get completely certified before they take bits and pieces and utilize that? Are there fragments that most people can implement, whether that's learning to evoke or anything like that? What can somebody do to start integrating some of these principles in their practice today?
Yeah. You totally don't need to be completely proficient. It's not like you're going from 0 to 100, not a black and white. Like there are ways to implement motivation training in parts. And we already said, like, motivation training has its own different things. You have a spirit, the attitude, how you are with the client, the way you are with the client. There are certain micro skills that we are using to guide the conversation towards change. Then there is certain language from the client, that's a change talk and sustain talk that we are trying to catch. Then we emphasize more of a change talk. So there are a lot of things in motivation interviewing, but you will be great if you're just starting with the spirit, and not doing even anything else. Trying to and if you're guided by the spirit of the motivational interviewing, the other things will follow by themselves. If you embrace the spirit that the client is collaborator, the spirit of a partnership, so you are going to invite the client for his own thoughts. If you embrace that the evocation that we are inviting the client to explore their own inner life, then you're going to ask the client about how he want to do it, about his desires, why this change is important for the client in the first place. If you talk about the autonomy, if you embrace the spirit of autonomy, your clients are going to have some choices within the motivation interviewing. And the thing is that the very funny thing with evidence-based industry sometimes is that we always talk about how there is no one way to skin a cat. If you want to build muscle mass, as long as the amount of the effective reps is the same, high volume, low volume, high reps, low reps, high frequency, low frequency, if you match the sets, if you match the effective sets, everything is going to be fine. Nutrition, if you match the calories and the protein and sustainability of the diet, how you position carbs and fats doesn't matter. The calorie, how you gonna the meal frequency doesn't matter. Meal timing doesn't matter that much. So there is a lot of different ways to organize, your nutrition and training. But when the client comes, we say, I only do macro tracking. Like I send you a set of macros, and if you cannot do that, like you're uncoachable client. If you're an evidence-based practitioner, you are going to provide the choices. Because providing the choices for the clients, giving the ownership, like giving the clients that ownership of their own journey, that they are the active agent in this story, will increase the engagement of the client, will improve the client's outcomes, and it will improve the whole coaching relationship. So if you are an evidence-based practitioner, you want to be someone who is giving the clients options to choose their own story, give them the certain agency. So integration of the motivational interviewing can happen in parts. We talked about that. You can apply certain parts of motivation interviewing, that's fine. Now with the personal trainers, I know a lot of personal trainers might watch. I'm a personal trainer myself, and I already mentioned that with personal training, we have a lot of times when it's completely fine to be directive. When you're pushing someone to lift the bench press, or when you're showing someone how to do correct squat, I'm not going to ask him in the last rep, say, how you feel about this repetition? Do you want me to assist you or not? What do you want? No. So you're going to be directive. It's fine. It's expected from you. But in between sets, I have that experience. In between sets, after the session, people like to talk about some side behaviors. Oh, I didn't sleep well. Oh, I'm drinking too much over the weekend. Oh, I have too much junk food now. Or I cannot watch my diet. What should I do? And we have only one speed, like directive. We direct them during the sessions, but we direct them for all the other behaviors. And they are very rarely are going to implement that. So I'm advising that if you're implementing motivational interviewing in the personal training settings, these side behaviors that you're discussing about in between the sets, before and after the session, are perfect for motivation interviewing. So invite the clients to talk about, so what do you want to do? How you see that this is happening? What kind of ideas do you have? So even if they ask you, like, I don't have any ideas. So you tell me what to do. If they even ask you what to do, you can say like, okay, would you like me to tell you some options what some of my other clients are doing in your similar situation? Say, yeah, of course. And you tell them, okay, so we can go like this, so we can go like that, or we can go like this. You give them 3 options. And then you say, which one, if any? Now look at this. Which one, if any, would you be willing to try out? So that's the language when I'm giving the options, but I'm giving the options not to do anything, which is I'm giving them autonomy to choose not to do the activity that I'm telling them that they could do, which is exactly reducing the defensiveness of the client, giving them the signal that, hey, this is your own journey.
Mhm.
You are in control of this own process. It is up to you, are you going to change or not? And when you set the stage like that, the clients are actually more ready to make a change. When they're not pressured to change, they're more ready to make a change. If you want, and look, if you want to have client that is more compliant and more coachable, make them your partner. Make them your partner.
Mm-hmm.
Make them look at them. Look the client as someone who has something valuable to contribute in your coaching relationship, and then you will have a client who is more ready to even listen to your directiveness going forward. Which is just to add this, which is what the research actually shows. Yeah. You have a research from the Teresa Moyers did it. I think she did a meta-analysis on that directiveness was even more fine. Like directiveness, telling client what to do didn't lead to negative clients outcomes in the presence of a good coaching alliance. So when you have good coaching alliance, when you made the client your partner, when he's autonomous in his own decision making, sometimes being directive is not gonna do so much harm, because overall coaching connection is established and the trust is there, and everything is running much more smoothly in that situation.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you mentioned starting with the spirit, and also, I mean, you're saying, you know, being evidence-based is kind of akin to presenting options and the possible routes for people to go. I think that, you know, becoming a good coach is finding those tools and being able to utilize the right tool at the right time, even within, like you're saying, within one session, you know, switching from this client-led approach to a very directive approach within, you know, the specific context. I mean, I look at it, you mentioned like getting a more coachable client is developing that partnership. And an obvious way to look at that is how easy is it to make a change when your client's spouse is involved, when they have a partner. And that's no different than getting the person that you're actually coaching involved in the process, because you're just getting more people on your team, let alone somebody who's with that, you know, that is the person. So it's I think that we can't get away from developing tools to the level of at least proficiency, not expertise, but proficiency, so that we can pull the tools out of the tool belt when appropriate. And I think that's really all it comes down to, is learning tools and learning when to utilize them. But Milos, this was an awesome conversation today, man. Of course, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Please send over that article, the eight steps to implementing. Is there anywhere else you'd like for us to link to? Anything else you're working on?
Well, I'm working on making some motivation interviewing courses for that. That's going to be probably late September, so it's not going to be. You can find me on Instagram at milos.nutritioncoaching. That's all. That's my handle there. Yeah.
Absolutely, Milos. Well, have a good rest of your day, rest of your night over there, and I will talk to you soon, sir.
Bye. Thank you for having me, Josh. Glad to talk to you.